The city of Denver, Colorado, was known for its breathtaking mountains, fresh air, and lively neighborhoods. It was a place where families built lives, where dreams grew quietly in the shadows of the Rockies, and where love could flourish, or fall apart, under the weight of time and choices. For Daniel Miller, Denver was more than just a city, it was home, a place where he thought he had built the perfect life. Daniel, a 38-year-old architect, had married his college sweetheart, Emily Johnson, 10 years ago. Their marriage had been filled with laughter, shared struggles, and dreams of a bright future. Together, they had purchased a modest but cozy home in the suburbs, a place with a small garden Emily loved tending to and a porch swing where Daniel often sipped his morning coffee before heading to work. To outsiders, Daniel and Emily's marriage looked flawless. Their friends envied their bond, admiring how Daniel always seemed to support Emily's artistic pursuits, while Emily proudly stood by her husband during his long hours and stressful projects. Yet beneath the surface, cracks had begun to appear, tiny at first, almost invisible, but slowly spreading like lines on fragile glass. The pressures of life had taken a toll. Daniel worked late nights at the firm, striving to prove himself in a competitive field. Emily, who had once been a vibrant painter with exhibitions in local galleries, began to feel overlooked and unappreciated. Their conversations grew shorter, their time together rarer, and the warmth that once filled their home cooled into routine. In the middle of this quiet distance entered Michael Adams, Daniel's best friend since childhood. Michael had been more like a brother than a friend to Daniel. They had played baseball together in high school, survived college road trips, and even supported each other through the heartbreaks of young adulthood. Michael was charming, quick-witted, and had an ease about him that made everyone feel comfortable in his presence. Over the years, he became a constant visitor at Daniel and Emily's home, sharing meals, laughter, and even helping out with house repairs. He was the type of friend who could show up unannounced, and no one would mind. But slowly, what began as harmless companionship shifted into something more complicated. Emily found herself enjoying Michael's company in ways that troubled her. Where Daniel was often distracted and tired, Michael was attentive, listening to her stories, asking about her artwork, and making her laugh when she felt lonely. She tried to ignore the flutter of feelings that occasionally surfaced, convincing herself it was nothing, that loyalty to her husband mattered above all. But temptation has a way of growing when loneliness feeds it. One crisp autumn evening, Daniel was caught up in another late-night meeting at work. Emily, tired of eating dinner alone, accepted Michael's casual offer to join him at a new Italian restaurant downtown. The dinner was filled with light-hearted conversation, jokes, and the kind of attention Emily had been craving. She returned home that night conflicted, her heart weighed down by emotions she couldn't name. Weeks turned into months, and while Daniel remained unaware, Michael and Emily's bond deepened. They weren't reckless, there were no obvious signs to raise suspicion. Yet, the stolen moments, the shared confidences, and the quiet companionship began to blur boundaries that should have remained clear. Daniel, though busy, wasn't oblivious. He noticed subtle changes in Emily. How she smiled at her phone when she thought he wasn't looking, or how she seemed more distracted during their rare dinners together. But he brushed the doubts aside, unwilling to believe that his wife and best friend could betray him. After all, trust had always been the cornerstone of his relationships. The turning point came one snowy evening in January. Denver had been blanketed in white, and Daniel had left work earlier than usual due to the storm. As he drove home, he decided to surprise Emily with her favorite takeout and spend the evening together by the fireplace. Pulling into the driveway, Daniel noticed an unfamiliar car parked discreetly down the street. His instincts pricked, but he shook the thought away, reminding himself not to be paranoid. Carrying the food inside, he stepped into the living room, only to hear muffled voices coming from upstairs. At first, he smiled, thinking Emily was on a call with her sister. But as he climbed the stairs quietly, something inside him urged him to listen more closely. The door to their bedroom was slightly ajar, and through the small gap, Daniel saw a sight that shattered his world. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, tears in her eyes, while Michael sat beside her, holding her hand. They weren't embracing, but the closeness, the intimacy of the moment, was undeniable. Michael's voice was low, filled with words Daniel couldn't fully catch, but the tone was unmistakably tender. Emily's reply was broken, filled with guilt and longing. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest as realization washed over him like ice water. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. The betrayal wasn't in loud declarations or scandalous acts, it was in the quiet, undeniable connection between his wife and his best friend. Pushing the door open, Daniel's voice cracked the silence. "What's going on here?" Emily and Michael jumped, their faces draining of color. Emily's lips trembled as she tried to speak, but no words came. Michael stood, guilt written all over his face. "Daniel, it's not what you think," he began, but the words sounded hollow. Daniel's eyes burned with anger and pain. "Not what I think. I've been blind, haven't I? The dinners, the late-night talks, the way you both look at each other, it all makes sense now." Emily's tears spilled as she whispered, "I never meant for this to happen. I was lonely, Daniel. You were always so busy, and Michael was just there." Her confession pierced deeper than any knife. Daniel felt a storm rage inside him, anger at his wife, fury at his best friend, but most of all, heartbreak at the crumbling of the life he thought was unshakable. Michael lowered his head. "I crossed a line I never should have. You're my best friend, Daniel, and I betrayed you. I can't take back what's happened, but I swear nothing physical ever happened. It was emotional, and it was wrong." Daniel's chest heaved as he fought to steady himself. The betrayal wasn't just about infidelity, it was about trust, loyalty, and the destruction of bonds he thought would last a lifetime. "Both of you," he said quietly, his voice trembling with restrained fury, "need to leave me alone tonight." Without another word, Daniel walked out of the room, his world spinning. He spent the night in his car, parked at a quiet overlook in the mountains, staring at the city lights below, wondering how everything had fallen apart so quickly. Over the next few days, the weight of the betrayal hung heavy. Emily begged for forgiveness, insisting that she still loved Daniel, that she had made a mistake born of loneliness and weakness. Michael avoided Daniel, ashamed and unable to face him. Friends and family soon learned bits of the story, their shock echoing Daniel's own disbelief. The road ahead was unclear. Divorce loomed like a dark shadow, yet so did the possibility of reconciliation. Daniel's heart was torn between the love he still felt for Emily and the trust that had been shattered. He attended counseling sessions alone at first, trying to untangle the mess of emotions inside him. Emily later joined, determined to fight for their marriage. She painted again, trying to reconnect with the person she had once been, while Daniel struggled to decide if forgiveness was possible. As weeks turned into months, healing was slow, fragile, and uncertain. Michael moved away to another city, realizing his presence only deepened the wound. His departure. Emily begged for forgiveness, insisting that she still loved Daniel, that she had made a mistake born of loneliness and weakness. Michael avoided Daniel, ashamed and unable to face him. Friends and family soon learned bits of the story, their shock echoing Daniel's own disbelief. The road ahead was unclear. Divorce loomed like a dark shadow, yet so did the possibility of reconciliation. Daniel's heart was torn between the love he still felt for Emily and the trust that had been shattered. He attended counseling sessions alone at first, trying to untangle the mess of emotions inside him. Emily later joined, determined to fight for their marriage. She painted again, trying to reconnect with the person she had once been, while Daniel struggled to decide if forgiveness was possible. As weeks turned into months, healing was slow, fragile, and uncertain. Michael moved away to another city, realizing his presence only deepened the wound. His departure left a painful emptiness, but also space for Daniel and Emily to confront their issues without constant reminders of betrayal. Whether their marriage would survive remained uncertain, but Daniel learned a powerful truth: love is not invincible, trust once broken is hard to repair, and sometimes the people closest to us can cause the deepest wounds. In Denver, under the shadow of the Rockies, Daniel's story became one of resilience, heartbreak, and the search for answers in the aftermath of betrayal. The journey was not about forgetting the pain, but about deciding whether love could truly rise again from the ashes of broken trust. Daniel returned to the house the next morning, his body heavy from a sleepless night in the cold of his car. The home that had once felt warm and welcoming now stood like a stranger before him. He unlocked the door slowly, every step carrying the weight of dread. Emily was waiting inside, her eyes swollen from crying, her hands trembling as she tried to speak. "Daniel, please, can we talk?" she whispered, her voice so fragile that it barely carried through the quiet room. Daniel dropped his keys on the table and looked at her. His heart still ached, torn between anger and the love that refused to disappear overnight. "Talk about what, Emily? How you and Michael decided my marriage wasn't enough for you. How my best friend betrayed me under my own roof." His words came out sharper than he intended, and Emily flinched, tears filling her eyes once more. "It wasn't planned," she said desperately. "I didn't go looking for it. I was lonely, Daniel. You were never here, and when Michael listened to me, I felt alive again. But I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to cross a line I couldn't take back." Daniel shook his head. "Lonely. Do you know why I worked those late nights? To give us the life we dreamed of. To build a future for us. And while I was out there trying to make sure we had stability, you were here giving your heart to someone else." His voice cracked, raw and filled with pain. Emily stepped forward, reaching for him, but he stepped back. "I still love you, Daniel," she whispered, her hands trembling at her sides. "I don't want to lose us. I don't want to lose you." He closed his eyes, struggling against the storm raging inside him. Love wasn't something that could be switched off, but neither was betrayal something that could be forgotten. "I need space," Daniel said finally, his voice low and broken. "I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't even know who you are right now." Emily nodded slowly, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'll wait," she whispered. "No matter how long it takes, I'll wait." The following weeks were some of the hardest Daniel had ever endured. He stayed at his brother's apartment downtown, far from the house that no longer felt like home. Every night, memories of Emily haunted him, the way she used to laugh at his jokes, the evenings they'd spent on the porch swing, the promises they made at the altar 10 years ago. It felt impossible to reconcile that woman with the one who had shared her heart with another man. Michael, meanwhile, kept his distance. Daniel received a letter one afternoon, handwritten and filled with remorse. Michael apologized over and over, admitting he had crossed a boundary he should never have approached. He confessed he was leaving Denver for a new job in Seattle, not because he wanted to escape but because he knew his presence would make healing impossible. Daniel read the letter twice, his chest tightening with anger and sadness. A part of him wanted to throw it in the trash, but another part clung to the truth that Michael had been his friend since childhood. Losing him felt like losing a brother, yet betrayal had cut too deep for reconciliation. Emily, on the other hand, refused to give up. She called Daniel every day, sometimes leaving long messages about how much she regretted everything, sometimes just quietly asking if he had eaten or if he was safe. She started painting again, pouring her emotions onto canvas. She even signed up for counseling, urging Daniel to join her. At first, he ignored her pleas. The wound was too fresh, and the thought of sitting in a room talking about forgiveness seemed unbearable. But one night, sitting alone in his brother's apartment with a bottle of untouched beer in his hand, Daniel realized he didn't want to live in bitterness forever. He agreed to meet her at a counseling session, telling himself it didn't mean he was forgiving her, only that he wanted to understand. Their first session was tense. Daniel sat with his arms crossed, his eyes fixed on the floor, while Emily spoke in a shaky voice about her loneliness, her guilt, and her desperate hope for a second chance. The counselor listened carefully, occasionally asking questions that cut to the heart of their pain. Emily, the counselor asked gently, why do you think you sought comfort from Michael instead of speaking to Daniel about how you felt? Emily's eyes filled with tears. Because I didn't want to be another burden. He was already carrying so much stress, and I thought if I asked for more, he'd resent me. Michael listened without judgment. It wasn't about love for him, it was about feeling like someone saw me. Daniel clenched his fists, the words stinging like fire. And you didn't think about how I would feel? How I would be destroyed by this? Emily's sob shook her whole body. I thought I could control it. I thought I could stop it before it went too far. I was wrong. I was so wrong. The sessions continued weekly. Some days ended in silence, others in arguments, and occasionally in moments of fragile understanding. Daniel found himself opening up too, admitting how the pressure of work had made him blind to his wife's needs. He realized he had neglected her emotionally, though nothing could excuse what she had done. The path to healing was not clear, but with each session, the ice between them began to crack, revealing glimpses of the love that once held them together. One evening, after months of counseling and endless conversations, Daniel agreed to return to the house for dinner. Emily had cooked his favorite meal, roast chicken with garlic potatoes, and set the table with candles, the way she used to when they first married. They ate mostly in silence, but the quiet wasn't as heavy as before. After dinner, Emily brought out a painting she had finished. It was of the mountains at sunrise, the light breaking through darkness, casting warmth over a cold landscape. This is us, she whispered. Broken, but maybe still capable of light. Daniel studied the painting for a long time, feeling a flicker of something he hadn't felt in months, hope. The road was far from over. Forgiveness would not come easily, and trust would take years to rebuild. But that night, as Daniel sat on the porch swing with Emily beside him, he realized he was willing to try. Not because the pain was gone, but because love, despite Ethan's determination, hardened as they drove back into the city. He couldn't live in the gray space of suspicion any longer. Either David was behind the picture and the whispers of doubt, or Ethan's marriage was already beyond saving. The following Monday, Ethan asked Claire for David's schedule. She hesitated but finally gave him the details of a company dinner that evening. Ethan waited outside the restaurant where the event was being held, his heart pounding like a drum. When David finally emerged, laughing with two colleagues before sending them off in another direction, Ethan stepped forward. David, he called, his voice firm. David turned, surprise flickering in his eyes before quickly shifting to a polite smile. Ethan Miller, isn't it? Claire's husband. What brings you here? We need to talk, Ethan said, his tone leaving no room for argument. David raised an eyebrow but nodded, leading him to a quieter corner of the street. What's this about? Ethan pulled out his phone and showed him the message with the picture. Did you send this? For the first time, David's charming mask slipped. His eyes narrowed. You think I have time to play childish games? Ethan stepped closer. Who else would want to destroy my marriage? Who else was there that night? David let out a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. Maybe your wife told you part of the truth. Maybe she didn't. She's talented, Ethan, and I value her more than you realize. Ethan's blood ran cold. What's that supposed to mean? It means she deserves someone who sees her worth, not someone who questions her every move, David said smoothly, his voice low. You're insecure. That's why she hides things from you. You're the reason your marriage is falling apart, not me. Ethan's fists clenched, but he forced himself to stay calm. You don't get to manipulate me. Claire is my wife, and whatever mistakes she made, we'll work through them together. You don't get to interfere. For a moment, David stared at him, his expression unreadable. Then he smirked. We'll see. Ethan turned and walked away, his chest tight but his mind clear. For the first time, he realized that no matter what games David tried to play, the choice lay between him and Claire alone. That night, Ethan told Claire everything. He described the confrontation, David's words, the veiled threats. Claire listened, tears streaming down her face. I should have told you everything from the beginning, she whispered. I let his attention get in my head, and I was selfish. But Ethan, I don't want him. I don't want anyone but you. Ethan looked at her, searching her face. He saw fear, regret, but also love. A love that, despite everything, had not died. Then we fight for us, he said quietly. Claire nodded, reaching for his hand. The path ahead wasn't easy. There would be scars, doubts, and moments of weakness. But as they sat together in their small Seattle home, the rain tapping gently against the windows, they made a silent promise. Whatever storms came their way, they would face them side by side. And though the cracks in their marriage would always remain as reminders, they also became proof that even in the darkest of times, love could survive if both hearts chose.